Hello. So in the last video I did several mistakes, and one of the mistakes was that I was trying to find an API view while I was using a JSON response in my code. If we go to the views.py page from the snippets folder, you can see that in all my views or in all my methods I'm returning JSON response. JSON response returns JSONs. It passes my serializer.data into, not passes, but it renders my serializer.data into JSON and presents a JSON output. And therefore it was silly for me to search for something other than JSON in the output. In this video I'll show you how we can replace JSON with something different, so that our response can be customized depending upon what you want to see in the browser. So let me go to the terminal and run a web server, run the Django web server, so that I can show you the API that we built yesterday. I'm now in my virtual environment. Now from here I will start the web server. The web server has started at this address. I go to the browser and I refresh the page, and I can see all the snippets that were created in the form of JSON. I can see the individual snippets by typing in their primary key. So there is no snippets with an ID of 1 because yesterday we deleted it by sending a delete request. So we have another snippet with an ID of 2, and if I put that ID here, I can get the detail of that snippet. I can put another snippet's ID, for example 3, and I'll get that snippet. This is in the JSON format. In this video I will introduce you few more objects. One is the request object, another will be response object, another will be status code, and another will be the API views. Now let's see them one by one. but to use them we have to import few things. From REST framework.response import response. Now I have imported the response. Now I do not need this HTTP response or the JSON response, so I can get rid of them. From here onwards we will use the response from the REST framework.response. I import status from REST framework. If you can see here, we are giving out some status code, like here 404 status code, which is for not found. Here is 400 for error and 204 for content not found, 201 for created. We can display the status code in a much better way using the REST framework status. I will import the API view decorator from REST framework dot decorators. Import API from REST framework dot decorators. I will use it to tell that my views accept which methods. If somebody tries to use a method that is not specified in my API views, then they will get 405 method not allowed error. So, from here onwards we will not need the JSON parser because we are using the API views. We do not need this render. And we do not need to exempt CSRF. Let's convert the CSRF to the API views. And in the API views, let's tell that a method only allows get and post request. So by using the API views, we are telling that a method only allows for get and post request, and we are handling those methods, the get method and the post methods, here in our code. Now, as I said, that we will not use the JSON response anymore because we have a better response, and that response is here, the response from the Django REST framework. So instead of using JSON response, we will use response. And now we can give it serialize the data. And now we will go to the browser and try to see what changes this response has brought to our API. There was some error. Let me check it. Oh, sorry, I forgot to delete this text that I used to explain. Also, since I'm using JSON response, I have not completely changed the JSON response with response. Temporary, I will keep the JSON response here. This line, I will remove this line. This is for temporary measure so that I do not get an error. Now let's see. Now you can see I do not get that old JSON. I get this beautiful API view which shows me my JSON in a beautiful way. Also gives me a form to insert new snippets. I've started using JSON response only for the GET request. For the POST request or for the detail view, I'm still using the JSON response. Now let me show you how different the response and the JSON response are. So if I go to the JSON, suppose this one too, and you get this old JSON response. Now let me change this to the new response and you will see the difference. Here in the detail snippet detail, I will accept GET request, PUT request, and delete request. Now I can change this JSON response to response. JSON response again here to response, and again JSON response to response. Not only the JSON response, but I can also change the HTTP response to response. A response can handle those kind of things too. Also, earlier we had to pass our request into a dictionary so that we can pass it back to a serializer. But now, since we are using the API view, we do not need to do that. So this is not required. We do not need to pass it, because now we can directly say that data is request.data. It will contain the parsed response. Same here, we do not need to pass it anymore. We can say request.data. Also, since we are using the status from the REST framework, we do not need to show this boring 201 and 400. That makes little sense. We can use a much better response like status.http201 created, and here HTTP 400 BAT request. Same here. And here and here. This long status gives much more information than those just numbers. Now let's see what those response has brought, what changes that response has brought here. Now you can see it's no more that boring JSON. It looks much better now. Let's go back to our code and delete the CSRF exempt, the JSON response and the HTTP response from our code because they are no longer needed. I can see that is still the JSON response is used here. I have to change that to response. Now let me open my Postman. If you remember, this application can be used to send the API request. So if I send the GET request to this URL, then it returns me JSON. And if I send the request from the browser, it returns me this nice web page. So the response can detect the type of the content requested and can deliver accordingly. Now I can try to send a post request. Let me make a post request. And I get an error here. Says that this field is required. I think I have given it here. Let me go to the browser. And now I have created a new record. Now one last thing I want to show in this video. We can add a format to our API. So open up our URLs. And here we import the format suffix patterns from the REST framework .url patterns, and at the bottom we write URL patterns is equal to format suffix patterns and the URL patterns. And in all our views, beside request, we will also accept a format and give a default value of none. Now if we go to a browser and we refresh, nothing changes, but now we have the ability to say snippets.json and the response will be in JSON. So by changing the format here, we can get different views. We can get the API views and we can get the JSON view. It's easy to make the post request from the API view. Just put in your JSON and post it, and at the top you can see the HTTP 201 created. This is a much better way to say that the record has been created instead of simply displaying 201 code. So this is all for this video.